Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands. I'm your host, Joe Jackson. Alongside me, as always, is my co-host, Kraig Bowers. We are here to preview everything you need to know from Purdue's rematch at Assembly Hall against IU. That takes place Sunday, February 23rd. It is 1:30 Eastern Time tip on CBS. Say February 23rd, man. This season has flown by. There are 5 games left for Purdue, or 4 games left for Purdue in the regular season. It is crunch time. It is almost March. We are almost here. Purdue has obviously already played Indiana once this year, where they picked up the 81-76 win at home versus the Hoosiers, a game that was probably much closer than most people, including me, expected. But now it's a rematch in Assembly Hall. Purdue has lost 3 straight. It's going to be another big time matchup without even taking into account that it's a rivalry game. So, Kraig, I'll throw it to you. Initial thoughts, just looking ahead to this game and about IU and where everything's at.
Well, obviously, this is just a really important one for Purdue, regardless of who they would be playing. It's not very often that a Purdue team goes through a 3-game losing streak. I think it was since 1920 or the 1920 season, 2019-2020 season. To be clear, it hasn't been since 1920 since Purdue has lost 3 straight. But it's been a hot minute, and Purdue really needs to find their footing again. Obviously, coming off of those 3 losses, some things have changed a little bit. Not too long ago, you and I were sitting there saying if Purdue goes through that stretch 2-1, we still thought they had a good chance to win it outright. And both of you kind of felt like that was a real possibility. And all of a sudden now they're sitting a few games back. Obviously, a big one tonight between Michigan and Michigan State to play out. And Purdue could still wind up backdooring their way into a share if they win out. So with those Big Ten goals, when you talk to Matt Painter at the beginning of the season and they talk about their goals, winning the Big Ten season is without a doubt, a top priority goal. Okay. Big Ten tournament, maybe not quite as much, but Big Ten conference is always a goal to accomplish, the first one to accomplish. So obviously need to get their footing back here if they're going to have any chance at that. And going down to play a team in IU, like you said, that gave Purdue more run at Mackey than most people thought. So playing them in Assembly Hall, certainly not going to be any easier, as we saw with the 2 Michigan games, though. No 2 games are alike, and things can definitely switch from one game to the next. So really looking forward to it. Just got all my final emails today. So with all my expectations of what I'm supposed to do to grab my credentials, be my first time down there in many, many, many years. So excited to go experience that firsthand. Don't know if I'll get to join you guys on the post-game show or not, join you and Greg, but we'll be obviously providing coverage directly from Assembly Hall that day.
Yeah, and make sure to subscribe, and if you turn on bell notifications, you'll get notified as soon as we do go live, which will be pretty much right after the final buzzer of Purdue versus IU. Regardless of the outcome, we'll break down everything that you need to know from what happened in the game. If Kraig can hop on, he can obviously add an insight from just being at Assembly Hall, and should be a good time. So if you haven't already, subscribe. Also, it's almost March. Gonna have a bunch of stuff. Good time to do that. Let's get into kind of more of the weeds of this game. I don't know if we're necessarily going to go through player by player like we do for a lot of these, just given that we already have one of those. And if you really wanted to, you could probably go back to the other one and find out some about the players. I do think a big thing to point out is during that game, the first matchup, the starting lineup for Indiana was Miles Rice, Anthony Leal, Mbako, Malik Renew, and Umar Ballo. That is not their starting lineup anymore. Recently they have started Trey Galloway at the point, Anthony Leal, Mackenzie Mbako, Luke Goody at the 4 with Umar Ballo at the 5, and bringing both Rice and Renew off the bench. I'm just going to jump in with this right away. I think it suits Purdue a little bit better, that matchup, where you can, we look at the first matchup between the two, and Mbako, he got cooking quick, right? And he ended up with 25 points, really effective shooting. And in our preview that we did with Tonsoni, he mentioned, Mbako's a guy that if he sees a shot or two fall early, he's an entirely different player. That happened, and Lawyer was on him. I think in this matchup with Goody at the 4, we saw it towards the end of that game where they put Lawyer on Goody. And I think you can. I don't know if they want to put first on Mbako, but I think you can do it if you want to and try to. Um, try to basically hide Lawyer on Goody and just be like, hey, don't let him get open looks from three. First, you can take Mbako. I know they'll switch guard actions, so right matchups don't always matter as much, but I think just looking at a big overview, like that is a bigger, I think, difference going into this game to me.
I'm with you. I like it. I like that what we maybe can do defensively against that starting lineup better. I think there are still concerns, which we'll get into, about Purdue guarding IU, regardless of whether it's that lineup or a lineup with Rice that are going to potentially give Purdue some issues. But just from a roster matchup, I'm with you 100%. The ability maybe to do some things different there with first on Mbako, because we talked about it going into the game. That was a big concern for us, and just how are you going to match up around the perimeter? And Mbako, to me, and I think Tonsoni reiterated this, when he doesn't have a definite physical advantage over a guy, I think he tends to struggle at times and can kind of disappear at times in certain games. But we're a team that he has a distinct physical advantage, just in terms of being able to use his size and be able to shoot over guys, or at a couple different times just kind of went through some people. So if the matchup lends itself to us being able to do some things with first on Mbako at times, if they wanted to, I think that would be really advantageous, and maybe flipping things a little bit from what they did the last time. Can we also just take a breath and, like, the offseason around IU was, oh my God, Woodson did such an incredible job getting all these transfers, right? And it was Carlisle, and it was Rice, and it was Ballo, and then bringing in Bryson Tucker as a freshman and whatnot, and Luke Goody. And now two of those are obviously contributing in a huge way. But it almost felt like during the offseason, it was like, all right, all these guys we've had other than Renew can kind of, and Mbako can kind of go sit to the side, and we're gonna upgrade. And then we're almost towards the end of the season here, and we're back to not Luke Goody, but we're back to Anthony Leal and Trey Galloway starting. And they've looked much better for it. Like, I'm not saying it's not the right thing. It feels like, for where people were talking about this team and what it would look like in the summer, is completely different than what's out there on the court now.
And that's also the reason why they're on the outside bubble and not in the tournament. It's because they have to play Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal. Like, it just, there wasn't good. Even if they started them from the beginning, maybe they would have been a little bit better. There just wasn't going to be that success with those two. Yeah. Not that they can't win game to game or are solid players, but to get to that next level, you needed Bryce to be a really, really good player, and that just hasn't been the case.
Right. As we look back at that last game, and we already brought up Mbako and the damage that he created against Purdue, outside of maybe some matchup differences, is there anything else? They did do a better job in the second half. Like, Painter talked about that in the post-game press conference, that, in the first half, it was really Mbako and Goody that killed him, because Goody comes out and hits some early threes also in there. Mbako gets going really early. And then at halftime, they kind of switch stuff up. I don't have the half-to-half stats here. Do you know how many did Mbako score in the second half? Do we have that?
I think I could probably find it.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up on the stat sheet. So, they did a better job on him in the second half, I guess, is what I'm getting to, even if we can't find that data. And Painter talked about how they – go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that felt in line with especially in the last 10 to 15 minutes, where they put Lawyer on Goody, and I think it was a lot of Heidi even on Mbako.
Yep. Right. And then what they didn't prep for, and Painter kind of called himself out for this, was that he did not see Woodson going to just a whole bunch of Trey Galloway off a pick and roll, and Trey Galloway getting downhill. And he's like, I did not prep our guys at halftime to see heavy doses of that. And then Trey started killing them. And to the point where Painter said in the post-game press conference, he basically says, thank God Trey didn't have the ball, right?
Yeah.
on their last shot attempt there, because nobody was stopping them. So I guess if we switch to the other two matchups that really kind of gave Purdue fits, What do you maybe see them trying to do a little bit differently on Galloway? You already talked about Goody. Maybe you just put Lawyer on there and hope he doesn't get going too hot. He's not going to get downhill near as much. So maybe Lawyer can match up with him still okay. But especially that like just pick and roll high ball screen with Trey Galloway that Purdue seemingly couldn't stop in the second half. What do you anticipate Purdue maybe trying to do differently there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to work a little bit better too. I think with this new starting lineup, where right, CJ Cox and Jakari and Colvin can rotate on Galloway. When Anthony Leal's in, like Smith can take Leal like he did last game. You can put Lawyer on Goody and first on Mbako. It's going to be a lot of pressure on TKR and drop coverage, and we saw him get exploited last game against Michigan State. I expect them to probably send more help than even normal in terms of just showing up in gaps, like especially Braden Smith. I think at times he'll probably just try to ignore Anthony Leal, and if Leal wants to hit a couple threes, great. He's 7 of 16 from three on the year. Anthony Leal. We are 20 whatever, almost 30 games in. If he knocks down a couple, you probably adjust from there. But I'd expect him to send a lot of help. You can't help too much off Mbako or Goody, so I think it's probably there. And just trying to be physical. It's got to have good screen navigation. Like I don't know if there might be even just some stuff of like trying to force him left more and just not let him decide which way he's going. So that way the defense, your defense is set up in the proper way. You don't have to worry about Galloway, jabbing left, going right, or vice versa. You're just, hey, you're going left, you're going into our defense and work from it there. I aside from that though, I don't know if there's too much, right? Like some of it is just simple, like some of it is just simply Purdue has to play good defense. Like at some point, it hasn't happened over the last 3 games. At some point, your screen navigation just has to be better. At some point, all the rotations have to be on points, and it just if it doesn't happen, I don't know if it really matters. What you game plan. At some point, Purdue just has to show up defensively as well.
And to that point, one of the things that we've talked about and we mentioned on the post-game show that we just got through with Michigan State was that Purdue hasn't really been turning people over to the same degree that they were for a large stretch of the season. But this IU game was really the last game they forced a ton of turnovers. Forced 20 turnovers on IU. Purdue has 10, so they're plus 10 and are in that turnover advantage standpoint. When we look at points that they got off of those, Purdue only gets 9. I thought that was kind of a little bit of an issue last time, is even though they were, plus 10 in terms of turnovers forced, they didn't necessarily capitalize those into fast break points. Obviously, you want to see Purdue get back to that. That's with Purdue not having a rim protector, right? Like I think some of this of they've defended against in the paint so poorly, and they have given up so many shots at the rim. When teams were able to get set and run their half-court offense, they were having success with that to a degree, even when Purdue was forcing a bunch of turnovers, right? But when you're forcing a bunch of turnovers, you're taking possessions away. So they're just not going to get as many shots in the paint and get as many shots at the rim. I think that's essential to this game, that they get back to doing that. Playing inside out through Ballo some, that gives Braden to me a chance to be a little bit of a free safety again. But really, they forced him on everybody. Rice has 2, Leal has 4, Renew has 3, Ballo has 3. Trey Galloway has 6 turnovers in that game. So as good as he played, he did have quite a few turnovers. I think it's something that we have to see this game to be successful.
Yeah, for sure. And Purdue's even when Purdue's defense was really, really good, their interior defense doesn't come from having a rim protector. It's from having bodies there in the correct spots. And that's not been the case for the last few games, where guys just aren't there. They aren't making the correct rotations. Teams have done a better job, I think, of handling the pressure as well. And you also have these spots where Braden can't be as much of a free safety, and he has to be more engaged on ball. And so you add that all up, and now turnovers aren't happening. And right, Purdue's as good as Purdue's defense has been, and it was awesome, especially during that stretch. At one point, it was ranked like 71st in the country for a reason, and a lot of those reasons have started to pop back up. Where it's just, you don't have awesome perimeter defense, and you don't have good interior defense. kind of leads to some issues. But like you said, 20 turnovers. Indiana turned it over on basically 30% of possessions. I don't know if I expect that number again, but if you can get close to that, you're setting up for some good success on especially on the defensive end. And I think us, right, we're 15 minutes in. We've really only talked about the defense, and I think that's where this team's at. Like, do you have any concerns about the offense?
I mean, if you look
Other
back
than
at the
just
last
missing
game,
shots.
right? If you look back at the last game, it really as close as that game was down the stretch, and like it blows my mind that Purdue forced 20 turnovers that game, and Indiana still ends up scoring 76 points in that game. But nonetheless, Purdue shoots 64% from two in that matchup against Indiana, but they attempt 13 3-point field goals, only shoot 15%. It's one of those games to me that it's like, man, if Purdue just shoots 30%, right, then this game's not close. So, I mean, I think that's a lot of it, is that we need to see Purdue knock down open threes. They shot the three ball fairly well at Michigan State. They didn't necessarily take a ton of them. But I think you're obviously going to have to knock down open threes. Outside of that, like offensively, obviously in that game, it was heavily, heavily dominated by the big three. TKR has 23, Braden has 24, Lawyer has 15. I think this was one of those games where it really started to come up of like, oh, like Purdue relies too much on the big three, and that's game wouldn't be close if you have more of a supporting cast or not. Those other players in that game took 11 shots total. Like some of that is this is just who Purdue's going to go to. And when Braden's getting what he wants, he shoots 11 of 21. When Trey's getting what he wants, he shoots 10 of 13, shoots another 3 free throws. When Fletch is 4 of 10 in that game, but he also takes 7 free throws that game. When those three are getting what they want, like you're going to keep going to those three. So like, to me, some of it's overblown of like, all right, well, yeah, we need more from everybody else around him, but also when those three eat and you're going to keep feeding those three.
I'm with you. I do think the whole bench thing has just become way, way overblown of like, yes, there are scenarios where you probably do want another guy to be able to step up, but at the same time, like Braden Smith and TKR is the best 2-man game probably in the country. Fletcher Lawyer is one of the best third scoring options in the entire country, probably. Like, you're just going to go to them because they get you good shots. Now, if in the games where Braden's 2 of 14 or whatever that we've seen once or twice, like, sure. But even then, Braden's generally just missing open shots that he makes. And so it's like, I understand it's a point that everybody can pick on and stuff like that. And it's an easy one. But like, at the same time, I think it just takes just simply looking at a box score and being like, oh, Purdue needs more bench production. Like, I think it takes away context from like how this Purdue team is built and what has gotten them to this point. And yeah, I'm with you. I think it's overblown. Like, this is another game I expect Purdue to be able to get what they want. Like, Braden Smith's going to get into the mid-range a lot, and there's going to be some kickouts to Lawyer, and the other guys do need to be able to knock down open threes. CJ, Heidi, Harris, Colvin. But TKR is going to be able to get what he wants. TKR's like, TKR has just been on an absolute tear lately. Like, he's from that Indiana game on, he's had 22 plus points in all 6 of the games. I think his worst shooting was 10 of 18 against Iowa. Like, the dude is just a bucket. And so you're just going to keep going to him because, like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. And I mean, quite frankly, in my mind, this last little run, and unfortunately it's come during 3 losses too. But going back before that as well, last 5-6 games, he's played like an All-American. Maybe not a first team All-American, but he's played like an All-American. Now, whether he actually gets that status, if Purdue's may not be viewed as a good enough team to deserve 2 All-Americans, and Braden Smith is definitely going to be an All-American at the end of this season. So don't know that he gets it. Hopefully he at least, ends up with some honorable mention type of All-American honors in there, but he's been a stud. And he's been pretty good at the free throw line over, the last few weeks as well. I think there was one game in there where maybe he stepped back a little bit, but by and large, he's been pretty decent. The one big concern, though, is, and we hear Painter keep talking about it, he's got to be able to stay on the court.
Yeah.
And I guess as you look coming into this game, gonna be some times he gets matched up with Ballo, obviously. Like, I guess, what does he got to do to stay on the floor? Like, where's he making the mistakes?
One, screens, and we talked about it a bit on the post-game show, that it isn't always as simple as just be still, because right, some of their two-man game with Smith and TKR is built on timing and slipping and things like that. But if TKR knows he's going to set a screen, one, he just has to be set. Two, Braden has to know and allow him to be set. And then honestly, beyond that, I think it's just, I feel like there's been one or two just kind of dumb fouls most games, where it's just like, you don't need to do that. Like, you don't need to really try to fight for that rebound you have like a 5% chance to get. And I understand he's a very good rebounder and things like that, but just some of the silly fouls, I think you take those away, you take away a little bit of screen navigation issues, or not screen navigation, screen setting issues. And now you're in a spot where, okay, maybe he ends up with 3 fouls, but it's 1 in the first half, 2 in the seconds, and you're not concerned. Against Ballo, right? It's not, assuming he's on Ballo, which I do expect, there is a slight chance, I guess, they put him on Goody just to try to not put him in foul trouble, and because Goody's not really going to draw too many fouls, but most likely he's on Ballo, and in that case, right, guards are going to be driving at him because Ballo is going to be the one setting screens, so it's walling up, being in good positioning, and then on Ballo, right, it's trusting your defense, because it's going to be a lot of doubles. It's going to be a lot of forcing baseline like Purdue always does, and trusting your helps there, so that way you don't have to dig into Ballo and be the one committing the foul.
Yeah. And, quite frankly, him and First both got to be able to stay on the floor. I think for Purdue to be as good as they possibly can be defensively, First has to stay on the floor too. His fouls come in different ways. Some of them almost seem frustration fouls, or fouls on rebounds where it's like the play's kind of done, the rebound is kind of lost, and maybe a flail in hand or something. And I get it, because there's been all this talk about Purdue rebounding, and they actually been pretty decent, at least keeping things close for the most part from a rebounding standpoint. But Caleb's one of the guys tasked with really fighting for that. Now, I don't think he finished with a rebound, if I remember right, in the Michigan State game. He's still down there fighting. And I think a couple of the fouls came off of fighting for those rebounds. So I think it's imperative in this game that both of those guys are be able to stay on the court. Obviously, if one of TKR, Smith, or Lawyer go to the bench with foul trouble, somebody else is going to have to step up, whether that's CJ Cox or Jakari, or we saw Cam and Miles start to knock on a couple of threes in the last game. Hopefully that gets them going a little bit as well. From just looking at this game in general, obviously going to Assembly Hall, I don't think it's to the level that it once was. So I don't know that going to Assembly Hall is quite like going to Mackey in terms of a road trip. But in terms of venues, Michigan State, Assembly Hall, Michigan State, IU at the Assembly Hall are probably two of the more intimidating ones in the league. So I think it's just also really important. You've got some guys, we talk about those IU guys who've never been to Mackey. Now you've got CJ, you've got Jakari, you got Raleigh, if he gets any minutes in this game, going down there for the very first time. So I think it's going to be really important for them to keep their composure. Anytime on the road, it's really important to withstand that first punch. A lot of times you'll see that home team go up a little bit and the crowd will really get rolling and get behind you. And being able to just have that steadiness and level-headedness of, all right, it's cool. Like, you got up 6, you got 8, up 8, whatever. Don't let the crowd affect you. Don't let the moment affect you, and stay calm and cool and level-headed. And, coming off that Michigan State game, this is a game where you need to see Braden make good decisions with the ball after a little bit of a higher turnover game. And I guess maybe if you have anything to add on to that too, but we do need to just talk about the fact that Braden has a chance to break the all-time Purdue assist record going in this game. And obviously that would be a massive feat. I think you need 7 to tie and 8 to break it. would kind of sting. Obviously you want to see him break it whenever he can break it. And I think he's going to break bigger records. He's going to break the Big Ten assist record before he's out of college. And he's going to have a chance at the national record that Hurley set as well. But it'd be nice to see him break this one at home. But if he gets 10 assists, that's got to mean good things are happening.
Yeah. And I think the other record that I haven't really seen be talked about, and maybe it has and I just have missed it, is he is on pace to average the most assists per game in Big Ten history in a single season. There's been, if the season ended today, there would been 2 players in history to average over 8 assists per game. That would be one Magic Johnson and Braden Smith, and Braden Smith would be higher than Magic. I think Magic was 8.4 if I'm remembering off the top of my head, and Braden's at 8.7, I believe, right now. So there's that one also where that one's not a this game specific, but it is something I'm going to be monitoring over the course. But yeah, I'd be
so
cool
that would obviously
what?
Yeah, that would obviously set the total assist record in a season 2, just because there's more games now, right? Or do they? That's just Big Ten play, that record, right?
No, in the entire season.
Okay, I got.
I think didn't Braden? I need to look it up now, but didn't Braden break the Big Ten assist record last year? I'm pretty sure
in a single season. No, you're right. I think you're right. I think he did break the single season one.
But
yeah,
regardless, Braden Smith's good, and he's got to be good in this one. And I'm going to be rooting for him to break it, because I think if he breaks it, that's generally going to lead to more success for Purdue than a 5 assist and 23 shot attempt game.
Yeah, 100%. Although he did put up quite a few points in this last game. I think he had 7 assists against IU this last time around. Let's see. He had, 7 assists. So 8 is certainly in the realm of possibility, obviously, for Braden to get 100% going into this game. Any other big topics, or you want to just kind of maybe talk about your 1 or 2 keys to this game?
I think keys work for me at this point.
Okay.
I mean, so one, like the biggest thing I'm going to be looking for is interior defense and turnovers. Like, if that can get shored up where both are working well, I think it leads to Purdue potentially even blowing out this game. I don't expect there to be a blowout, because that is the quiet thing about Indiana, is maybe not even quiet, because the late game mishaps have been very, very loud. But like, aside from the Wisconsin game, over the past month, IU has been in every single game and has had a legit chance to win every single game. So defense, turnovers, that's going to be key number 1. Obviously, I just assume that's going to be for most people. And then key number 2 probably for me is just like knocking down some open threes. Like, they were 0 of 8 on open threes last game against IU. Right, Braden and TKR are going to do their thing, but like, you get Braden and TKR and then a couple guys knocking down a couple open threes, I think it just opens up the game so much more.
Yeah, and honestly, you kind of take my 2 there as well. And not that those are earth-shattering, groundbreaking things, but for me, that turnover margin has to be, in my mind, fairly heavily slanted towards Purdue creating more turnovers than giving up turnovers on their end and then knocking down open threes, because that just didn't happen the last time these 2 teams played. And like I said, quite frankly, if Purdue just knocks down a handful more open threes in that last game, then it's really not even close. So I think that's key. I think it always just helps to kind of stem momentum and stem the tide a little bit, I guess. Anytime that you're on the road, if you can knock down some open threes, it tends to kind of take the wind out of their sails a little bit from that standpoint. Not to really compare to last year because Purdue had Zach, right? But those 2 games were significantly different games last year. One that felt pretty close. No, both were blowouts last year, weren't they?
Yeah.
Never mind.
Last
I don't
year
know what
blowouts.
I'm talking about.
The year before,
yeah, maybe I'm thinking.
I think closer.
Yeah, I think one was close and the other one was like 30 points or something like that, if I remember right. Yeah. I was trying to pull it up in the archives, but these games can flip. Obviously, with the rivalry game, though, you also just never know what's going to happen. Obviously, Purdue really needs this one. Bracket Matrix still has Purdue as a 3 seed, but now you're starting to see them throwing around anywhere from, some people still have them as like the last 2 in their bracketology. Some people have them as low as a 5. So lose this one, and then that seed line starts to look a lot different as you head to the end of the season. So obviously just imperative from long-term postseason importance as well in this one.
Yep, definitely. And you also just gotta be a rival. Just gotta get back on track. Like I think you win this game, things can just calm down a bit. You got UCLA. You have 2 home games coming up after this, UCLA and Rutgers. Neither easy games, but both very winnable games. And then even at Illinois, again, not going to be an easy game by any means. But if you ask an Illinois fan, like they're in the same spot as Purdue, where I think if you ask, maybe not all, but there's a chunk of Purdue fans where you ask them, and Purdue's losing every single game from here on out, and you ask some Illinois fans, they also would say that. So a stretch right here where you can get back on track, get right for March, and then try to go on a run there. We'll have everything you need to know from the game, after the game, on our live post-game show, which you can subscribe here. If you turn on bell notifications, you'll get notified as soon as we do go live. Make sure to follow Kraig at Kraig Bowers 34. He'll have in-arena coverage, and we'll also have some stuff up on at Boilers in Stands on Twitter, I'm sure, as well. You can follow us there for some more in-game stuff, but appreciate everybody tuning in. Should be a fun one. It is February 23rd, Sunday. It is a 1:30 Eastern Time tip on CBS, and we will see you all after the game.